Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got breaking news coming out regarding NATO to share with you guys. We're going to be talking about Mark Rutte in today's video. He is the Secretary General for NATO. That's him right there in the photo for you. And today he was speaking at the Carnegie Europe Conference in Brussels. And I want to talk to you guys about some of the things he was mentioning. And I also have a video to show you guys a quick clip of him speaking for about 1 minute and discussing this war between Russia and Ukraine, and also the threats moving forward between NATO and Russia. Okay, so one of the things he warned about today was Russia's preparing for long-term confrontation with NATO. Okay, so moving into the future, we're talking 4 or 5 years is what he stated. He said, we are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. He's also pushing for NATO members to start discussing 3% defense spending versus 2%, which is the current target for the alliance right now. So if they move to 3%, there's many nations right now that are not even spending even 1%. And we do also know that Donald Trump getting into office as president coming in January, he's for sure going to put pressure on NATO nations to come to the table and contribute fairly, at least 2% or higher. We'll see if they end up agreeing on 3, but at least 2% as far as we know for right now. So they are discussing that also. And, he also mentioned that it is time to shift to a wartime mindset, as well as turbocharging defense production and defense spending. Okay, so it looks like NATO could be preparing for war with Russia in the future. And we have heard this before. There was roughly about, I want to say 6 to 8 months back, we had a clip that I showed you guys, if you've been around that long, from NATO Admiral Rob Bauer. At one point, he was warning of war with Russia in the future. I think it was somewhere around 2028 or 2029, which would line up with what Mark Rutte is stating here around 4 to 5 years from now. Okay, so we're going to talk some more about this today in terms of war with Russia and NATO in the future and what they're preparing for, and also upping their defense spending within NATO. So let's hop on over here real quick. I want to show you guys this article from Sky News, and then we're also going to hop on over to X, and I'll show you guys the clip of him speaking at this conference, okay? So this says here, NATO must shift to wartime mindset, Secretary General warns. Russia's preparing for long-term confrontation with Ukraine and with us, Mark Rutte said, adding, we are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. Okay, this is coming out today, December 12th, 2024. Here's him at a NATO conference in the past. And it says right here, the head of NATO has warned the alliance is not ready for the threats it will face from Russia in the coming years, and that it is time to shift to a wartime mindset. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of the organization, said NATO members had spent more than 3% of GDP on defense during the Cold War, and argued future spending would have to be much higher than the alliance's current target of 2%. Russia's preparing for long-term confrontation with Ukraine and with us, Mr. Rutte said during a speech in Brussels. We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. He added it is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending. Mr. Rutte said the current security situation was the worst in my lifetime. NATO leaders agreed to end the defense cuts that began when the Cold War ended after Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula a decade ago, moving towards spending 2% of GDP on their military budgets. But since Russia invaded Ukraine almost 3 years ago, they have agreed the 2% target should be the minimum for defense spending. While the alliance meets that target collectively, around a third of members do not hit it individually. At least 23 of its 32 members will meet the 2% target this year, the alliance estimates. Okay, so it looks like roughly about 9 members or so are currently not meeting the 2% target, but majority of them will meet at least 2%. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who assumes office on January 20th, has threatened that the U.S. will not defend delinquent countries that do not spend enough on their defenses. The alliance is founded on the principle that an attack on one member is considered an attack on them all, and Mr. Trump's comments raise fears over whether the U.S. would act to help in a crisis. Okay, so in regards to Donald Trump, I'm wondering as well if maybe Mark Rutte is coming out stating this, that there's potential war with Russia and kind of getting the saber rattling going to maybe potentially build a fire under NATO's rear end to get these countries that are not currently spending 2% or more, get them up to par to at least minimum of 2%. And if they end up deciding on 3%, well, then maybe this will put more pressure on some of those countries to increase their defense spending to get it closer to 3 or higher. Mr. Rutte, a former Dutch prime minister, called on NATO members to stop creating barriers between each other and between industries, banks, and pension funds. In a message to the defense industry, he said, "There is money on the table and it will only increase, so dare to innovate and take risks." Mr. Rutte also warned of a coordinated campaign to destabilize our societies, which included cyber attacks and assassination attempts. He also said NATO must be clear-eyed about China's ambitions and cautioned Beijing is building up its forces with no transparency and no limitations and bullying Taiwan. So obviously he talked about lots of different things. He talked about China, what China's doing right now, building up their military. They've also been unveiling lots of new aircraft recently, some even in comparison to F-35s that the United States and Israel has right now. So obviously China is an adversary to NATO and the United States, so they're obviously a threat as well, not only Russia. He's also warning about cyber attacks, assassination attempts coming from Russia as well, as we've been hearing lots of reports of what are so-called hybrid attacks inside of Europe, potentially linked to Russia. Okay, so now we're going to move on to X, and I want to show you guys this clip of Mark Rutte speaking at this event. Like I said earlier, it's just about 1 minute long, and it says here from Mark Rutte on X, "We can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life. This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending." So go ahead and pay attention to what he has to say here. It will have subtitles, and it is in English, so take a look.
Our deterrence is good, for now. But it is tomorrow I'm worried about. We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. Danger is moving towards us at full speed. We must not look the other way. We must face it. What is happening in Ukraine could happen here too. And regardless of the outcome of this war, we will not be safe in the future unless we are prepared to deal with danger. We can do that. We can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life. This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending.
All right, so there you go. Wartime mindset is what he's saying that NATO needs to shift towards, that they need to get ready for some sort of war confrontation in the future, that a lot of this is obviously about deterrence at first, but if deterrence fails, then war is the next option. So it looks like NATO is getting ready for some sort of confrontation in the future. And the fact that they're upping their defense spending to 3% could possibly indicate that. But at the same time, I think this could also be due to Donald Trump getting into office in January 20th. That's going to put major pressure on NATO to come to the table again and put their part of the pie in, okay, their piece of the pie, and contribute their defense spending to NATO. As many times come out in the past, said that the U.S. was picking up for the bulk of the load, and he's not going to allow the U.S. to get ripped off anymore, is kind of the way that he said it. So definitely interesting information coming out from Mark Rutte today. Just wanted to share this with you guys, let you know what some of the things that he talked about while he was at this conference. And that's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.